for church leaders, you have to figure out, and it's an ongoing process. You have to figure out ways to like find out people's gifts, talents, and figure out a way to cultivate that.
Yeah. We critique what we don't understand, right?
I can't tell you how many times I've been on staff at churches and I never got to attend a church service because I was the guy making it happen.
Yeah. Experience a move of God. We got to have this huge LED wall, the smoke. We got to have, the worship leader levitating from the ground. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't require all of that. Hey, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of Chasing Elephants. I am your host right now this week, Jeff Wallace. And listen, as my brother, I mentioned last week, my brother, he went from New Zealand with his daughter Karis to California. And so we were like, hey, bro, you might need to recover so that you can know what time zone you're in and what planet you're on. And so as we're doing that, we thought, man, it would be great to have like a living legend up in the building. And that's what we have today. Man, I'm super excited. I got to do this introduction properly. This brother he's not just the creative and marketing director for Student Leadership University. He's not just an incredible husband and father to his bride and three beautiful children. He's not just a friend and mentor to so many. Man, this dude is like the real deal. When you think about in our world of Christian creatives and artists, you think about someone who has been on the road with some of the best and most sought after hip hop artists, from Lecrae to KB to Social Club, Misfits to Tadashi, Tripley. I mean, everybody. This guy has been on tour with them, holding it down, keeping the crowd hype. You've seen him in many of our Lyft tour stops, and people are asking, hey, can he be on our stop? And I'm like, hey, we got a couple cities. He's there, and people are angry with me or whatever. I'm sorry about that. But ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I want to welcome back. He's been here before, but want to welcome back Bryan Martinez, a.k.a. El Val. What's up, brother?
Man, I'm good, bro.
I love that. Hey, I love that. So, I was trying to hype you up for like the big intro, and then it's like, man, I'm good.
It's I'm just enjoying this Florida fall weather.
Yo, that's right.
Florida living. And
yes. We snatched them up, ladies and gentlemen, from the great country of Texas.
The Republic of Texas. Yes.
And we brought them to the city, beautiful and stuff. And so how has that been, man? How's your family like kind of adjusted to being here in Mickey's land?
Because my oldest she turned 13 this year, so it's kind of like a tough stage to move, to get up and move. So obviously, like, we had some challenges in the beginning. I think we're in a great place.
Yeah.
Like, she just got really involved. I'm just thankful for the, local church that just kind of stepped in.
That's awesome.
She's walking, like, in her calling now.
Yeah, man.
She's involved with the worship ministry. She's singing now.
So good.
My wife she likes to explore. She's the exploradora. And so she's out there, one day she drives to one part of the state, the next day she drives to the other part of the state. It's just, I'm thankful.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to take a little longer to settle in, but I think we're good. Like, it's just a good time of, just a good season right now. Yeah. I'm thankful.
Yeah, man. Yeah. One of the beautiful things I do love, and you just mentioned it, man, about being in Orlando, like, we're in the center of the state. And so in about an hour and a half, 2 hours to 3 hours, bro, you can get to water, and you can go to any other part of the state. The furthest obviously being Miami, and Key West down south. But man, if you go to the west, a couple of hours, you're in Tampa. You go to the east, a couple of hours, you're in Daytona, and then you go up to Jacksonville.
Florida is just like, one part of the state looks like New York City.
Yep.
The other part of the state looks more like Cuba. And then like you go to parts where it's like, where am I? Like,
Right.
Does anyone wear a shirt around here? Like it's just
that is so.
It just culture just changes drastically. Just like a 30-minute drive and you're in a different world. And like, how did I end up here?
That's so.
Some parts
true.
feel like Jurassic Park, just jungle.
That is so funny, but that's so true, man. Like Florida is probably more eclectic than people really realize.
I had no idea. Like I was expecting like the Caribbean culture.
Yeah.
Like I was looking forward to that.
Yeah.
And that's here, but there's also a lot of other cultures that are here. And there's pockets where I feel like certain people from some state or city move to, and then everyone comes with them.
Right.
And so like it turns into that.
Yeah.
Like I feel like there's parts of Florida that feel like the Midwest.
Interesting.
Really? There's places of Florida that feel like you're in the South.
Yeah, that is true.
And then there's places of Florida that feels like you're on the East Coast, like Northeast type of vibe.
I can feel that.
Yeah.
I can feel that.
And of course the obvious, like Miami's obviously like just a party every time I drive through there. I feel like listening to salsa music. And just,
Yeah, dude, like it is really, really a very unique place. And then like you can go up to like the Panhandle. Like if you go to, Destin, Pensacola, man, it's just beautiful. We have some friends there in Pensacola, and one of our board members, she's awesome. I love Miss Stephanie, and she lives up there in Pensacola, man, and we've been up there doing lift tour and some other. It's just absolutely gorgeous, and it's so chill. What I love about it is it's just a very chill area. Like I could see, like if you just want to go someplace where, to your point, no busyness of like a Miami City or whatever. You just want laid back, good living. That's one of the places that's really kind of tucked away, there in the Gulf of a state. So it is, man. Florida's a very unique state and all of that. And so, well, welcome, man. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
And so what I want to do, bro, is like, everybody knows you as Elval, but what people don't know, maybe they do, I don't want to assume, but like, man, you really are great with really speaking to creatives and not just from like DJing and the hip hop side, but just really how to be very creative, innovative. You've helped us when it comes to a deeper social media engagement, how we look at the analytics, even of our podcasts and our social media sites for Student Leadership University and stuff. And so I really thought it'd be great if we had a conversation that was twofold. One, talking to those creatives and aspiring creatives, but then also secondly, just kind of giving some advice to leaders who are leading creatives, because my oldest son Jay, he is a creative and he just thinks differently, man. And and I'm thinking about it from a parenting standpoint, because he has such this abstract way of seeing things. My approach to how I parent him and lead him is so different than, like, say, my baby boy Cameron, who's super literal. Like, structure. Like it's more like, I get it. Yeah, we call Cameron by the book Bob, and he doesn't color outside the lines. And so I myself, as just a father, I got to lead out of two sides of my brain. So I was thinking about, man, how does that impact like leaders who are leading creatives? So I thought I'd just start, man, by really just asking a question, like just tell us your story. Like, how did you really get involved in the arts and how it kind of morphed into like becoming this creative that you are?
I was always just born. I was born in a house, chaotic and dysfunctional, but there was always art. Like I remember being little, like before I even started elementary school, and I would just dig through my dad's disco records. Yeah, like he had the turntable. There was always music. In my culture, like everything revolves around like the arts. There's always arts. So like from a really young age, like it was just kind of instilled in me. And then being this hybrid of like, I was Mexican, immigrant parents, but I'm living in the city, so I'm listening to Tupac, and then I'm also listening to like traditional Mexican music. So like it was always there. Like I was always a kid. I still am. I doodle, I draw all the time. My brothers were big time drawers. Everything we did just had I always had to have like this layer of art on it.
Wow.
The cars they drove, even the bicycles we rode, at lowrider bikes. Like it was always something that we had to make a statement.
Yeah, I love it.
So like it was just always embedded in me. When I became a believer, I didn't know the do's and don'ts, so to speak.
That's good.
I didn't know, you're not supposed to wear a hat in church. Nobody told me that. My dad wasn't a believer. My parents weren't I didn't grow up in a family that went to church. So naturally, when I became a believer, it was like, I want to serve the only way I know how to serve.
That's good.
And for me, it was the arts.
Yeah.
And I didn't know I was a radical, so to speak. I just did it.
Yeah.
Because like, this is cool. This is the culture I'm in. This is what I'm living. And then that just kind of progressed. I always had a heart for serving the local church. So like certain like needs will come up. And it's like, I've never done it, but I can learn it.
Yeah.
I've never done a graphic, but I can learn it.
Yeah.
We need to promote this youth service or whatever.
Yeah.
The same thing with like just video, photography. Everything just came about through the local church.
Yeah.
And everything to me was the arts, and so it just kind of naturally just progressed.
Yeah.
I got some training here, but the vast majority of everything that I do, I learned it at the local church.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was through serving.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. I mean, I love that. Like, so there was this natural wiring, exposure, just in the rawness of the arts. But then, as you had an encounter with Jesus, and got an opportunity to get connected to the local church, that natural wiring. I love how you talked about how, just shared how the church helped cultivate that. And I think in that, Bryan, you got to be in good churches who can understand how to properly cultivate that, because, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think, the wrong church will take a look at that and just say, I don't know, suppress it, or this is anti-religion or anti-church, and you know what I mean, or just don't know how to, here's a thought, disciple someone who is just raw, straight from the street to the pulpit, or to the street to the church pew, and like, how do I help cultivate this gift? Because that's what it is. It's a gift that's given that needs to be cultivated and nurtured properly, and so speak to that a little bit. Like, did you automatically find a place that understood how to, or was that a process within itself?
It was always a process, and there's this man that I always give props to, because he kind of built my foundation. His name was Dr. Moses Rodriguez. In the state of Texas, grew up as a migrant farm worker and ends up with a PhD in pastoring a church in the inner city. He didn't understand the culture necessarily.
Yeah.
But he was for it.
Yeah.
He was like, hey, you have a gift. I don't know what it looks like, but let me build a foundation for you. And it was literally one of those things where he called me one time and he was like, hey, I'm doing this discipleship training. You need to commit to, I think it was like twice a week or once a week or something like that. But he built this foundation for me. And that's been the foundation that I've done everything with. He literally sat down with me, and it was like almost a whole year, I believe. Yeah. Of like just grinding it out. And then after that, it was just like, some guys didn't agree with it. I remember like early on when I was in high school, I used to lead a Bible study group in high school. And I remember back in, I feel like I'm getting up there too, because
you say back in the day
before social media, before smartphones. There was already social media when I was in high school, but before the smartphones, I would design like these invitations. And I remember a church leader looking at it once, and he was like, man, this looks like obscenities. And I didn't know. To me, it was graffiti, and it was in at the time. Yeah. And my invitation to a Bible study, he said, looked like obscenities, but it was just graffiti.
Yeah. I love it.
So that's the only way I knew how to communicate, and that's what I was doing. But I've been kicked off of stages. I've been called all kinds of things. I never looked for approval from like that type of church leader. And so it might have bothered me for an hour or two, and then I just got over it.
Yeah.
And I just kept going. There's been different levels of it. Like one guy that had a huge following posted this whole thing about how churches are letting secularism and he I think used like a really strong word like satanic culture or something like that into their churches, into their youth. And he posted a video of me. But I was upset not because he said that about me to a big old fan base. I was upset because he didn't tag me on it. And I was like, dang, dude, you should have at least let people like, you should have directed that traffic towards me.
Yeah.
But I feel like if you're, for church leaders, you have to figure out, and it's an ongoing process, you have to figure out ways to like find out people's gifts, talents, and figure out a way to cultivate that.
Yeah. That's good.
And that's a challenge because there could be a guy that's like, because the obvious are like, oh, you sing, you want to lead worship.
Yeah.
Oh, you play an instrument. Oh, you preach. But there's a guy that could be out there and he's like, hey, I'm a carpenter and I want to serve. Yeah. Like, how do we figure out how to cultivate that? How do we grow that? How do we allow them to serve in the church with their giftings?
Man, no, that's, oh gosh. Oh, you said like, okay, so what I'll do, we'll double back around. I want to land back there because I think that that's so important, Bryan, because of the fact that, you know, sometimes we critique what we don't understand, right? And I think that there is value in having deeper conversations with someone before we automatically assume that this is blasphemous, this is satanic, this is unbiblical. I mean, obviously there's some things that you can hear, see, and everything. It's like, okay, there's no ambiguity, right? Like, you know, all right, okay, bro, like this is bad. I won't mention name, but I remember you and Brent showed me this clip of a guy preaching, and some of the phrases he used, you know, I'm just like, okay, that right there,
there's no
gray.
There's no gray,
right? You know, and so, but I think for those young students, especially, man, when we think about the very diverse world that we live in, and you are going to have, particularly for those who are next gen leaders and student pastors, young adult pastors and leaders, man, you're going to have a melting pot of different, not just cultures, you know, and ethnicities, but also giftings, a very diverse amount of giftings. And how do we not segregate or isolate or even insulate you know, certain individuals and kind of cherry pick, okay, this can be used in the church because I clearly understand it, but because I don't fully understand this one, I don't know about that one. And I think there is some leadership things that we can learn about that. So we'll get to that. But for those who are aspiring creatives, those who are either in where you were, there, experience some of the frustrations you've had, or just those who are, you know, looking to say, man, I want to take it to the next level. Like, what would you say to aspiring artists and creatives in this ever-evolving world and culture that we live in?
I mean, I say this all the time, but it sounds repetitive, but I mean, the first thing you got to do is build your foundation. And that may be creative, that may not be creative. Do the hard things first. Get in there, get discipled. You know, learn what you believe in. Build that foundation that you're gonna stand on for the rest of your life. Once you build that foundation, I mean, the creative space is so big that you have to kind of test out. So to speak, like, hey, let me take this car for a test drive. See if I like this car.
Yeah, that's good.
Do I want to drive manual? Do I want to drive automatic? Like, you just figure out like things, and you'll realize pretty quickly you can be okay at everything, but you're gonna be really good at some things.
That's good.
And it's good to learn everything, but it's also good to focus in on those things that you're good at. Yeah. And you know, for some people, that's I mean, some people are good at creative writing. Other people are great at designing merchandise. So the list goes on and on.
Yeah.
And just it takes time. It takes patience.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the more cars you test drive, you eventually gonna find one that's like, this is the one. This is the one I want to run in.
Yeah.
But yeah, just figure it out. Take time and figure it out.
Yeah, and I would add to that too. I think with that, like, I wrote down you about building that foundation and doing the hard things first. I think if there was a subsection of that, then what you're basically saying is, I think it's important also to keep your posture of humility intact.
For sure, yeah.
Because a lot of times everybody wants to be an instant influencer.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to kind of have this microwave approach to success. And not do the hard things first, or build that foundation, do the legwork, do the grinding. There's events that you may volunteer your time, or things you may volunteer your time. You may not get the big check. But I think it's also in that, as we were just talking about and you shared earlier, about just because we're talking about in the evangelical space, in the local church space of this. So I think when you think about the creative space and secular society, the rules are really, there are no rules. It's like dog eat dog, every man for themselves. I mean, obviously there are rules. I'm not being disparaging to that, but I'm saying, but in the Christian world, if you're trying to be a creative, I think you also have to be patient and go through the process of helping people understand what that really means and what that looks like and what that space is all about. And what I've always loved and respected and appreciated about you is that even when people were saying this looks satanic or this looks, whatever, like, you never just been like, man, you just don't understand me, I'm just leaving the church. Like, it was like, hey, no, I really feel a calling to this gift, and I need it to be cultivated, but I also need to help people. One, help me cultivate that, but then two, educate people on what I'm trying to accomplish, how this really fits in not only in the grand narrative of Scripture, but how it connects to culture and everything like that. And I think that if creatives can see this as a marathon and not a sprint, and play the long game, when it comes to helping churches fully and better understand how to lead creatives, which we're going to lead into next, I think then that transition and that process might be better. And so for those of you who are aspiring, you can speak a little bit more on this, Bryan, those who are aspiring to be a creative in the context of the local church or a Christian environment, I think, one, you do have to do your homework of knowing what's relevant, culturally acceptable. But then two, in the same vein, you also have to be patient with the church and ministry that you're working with to help them understand, what is the strategy and process and how this fits into the mission and vision of our church. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, that also goes back to the foundation. Because if you have a foundation, then you have a heart for ministry. Right. So if you have a heart for ministry, you have a heart to serve people.
Right.
That includes your own leadership. That includes your staff. That includes the members. And so even if it's messy in the beginning, if you have a heart for serving, it goes both ways. You're patient with your leadership. Your leadership is patient with you. Is it perfect? Of course not.
Right.
But if you have the same end goal in mind, then it can work. The process is worth it.
And just, we didn't do this earlier, but just as just a note, when we're talking about creatives and artists, we are, just for the sake of this conversation, we are kind of looking at a broad scope of it. And so Bryan serves as our marketing and creative director here, and so, but he's also an artist. As far as a DJ, he does videos and graphics, and so when we think about creatives, we're talking about those types of leaders who are creating digital content for your ministry, who's also may have a heart for the non-traditional arts, not just praise and worship or liturgical dancing, and so,
mime dancing.
Mime dancing, right? I grew up with that, mime dancing. So any student or young adult or adult who has this heart for artistic and creative expressions in your church. That's who we're talking about. So with that, let's land the plane here, because I think it's important, as we talked about the creatives themselves and how you can kind of help those aspiring creatives, kind of evolve. But let's talk about the leaders. And you've kind of alluded to it in some instances already, but, how would you suggest to the leaders that are listening, like ways that they can lead creatives in their church or ministry?
The first thing I would say is do your homework. What specific roles are you trying to fill?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to go look for a graphic designer to be my sound guy. It could be.
Yeah,
It could be.
Get it, yeah.
But don't expect it to be.
Right.
It's not very likely that a guy who likes to draw on his iPad wants to fine-tune your sound system. That's a different art.
That's good.
Once you figure that you have to do your homework, because then once you have a specific, like, this is what we need to get done, then you can start looking for the right person.
Yeah.
I always say I'd rather look for someone who has a heart, because I can coach them, versus someone who's extremely talented and doesn't have the heart.
That's good.
Then you're just going to keep clashing.
That's good.
They won't take correction. If their heart's not in ministry, it's just not going to work out.
Yeah.
As much as you want it to work out, it's not going to work out.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I've seen that played out plenty of times. Some guys grew from it. Other guys kind of fell off. Spiritually because of it. They were in a way forced into a position that they didn't necessarily want to do in the beginning.
Sure.
And then they just get really bitter about it because it was just wrong for both sides. The creative needed to mature spiritually.
Yeah.
And so it just doesn't work. So that'll be the first thing, is do your homework.
Yeah.
Find out what you're looking for. Again, don't expect a web designer to be the guy to design your stage. Could be. Yeah. But not very likely.
Yeah.
And just don't make assumptions. Like, if I'm looking for...
That's good. Don't make assumptions.
Somebody to help me with graphic design. This guy can be really good at print design and be terrible at making, some graphic for social media. So just ask the questions.
Yeah.
Like, what is it that you're good at? What do you love doing? And then what would you like to learn? That way we can challenge that process and then help you build that somehow. Just ask the right questions. That's the first. I would start there. And then I would really just, once you find the right person, just a reminder, is that creatives are human beings.
Yeah.
They're human
That's good.
beings.
Yeah.
And so, you want things to get done, but at the end of the day, you have to shepherd them as well.
Yeah.
Creatives, we're a weird bunch. Part of the reason why we make art is because the emotions are everywhere. And so a lot of creatives have a hard time controlling emotions. So you got to be patient with that. You have to steward that well, shepherd that well, be patient. Don't just always expect them to produce things. Take time and invest in their spiritual life.
Yeah.
How are you doing spiritually? Hey, come hang out. Like, we're not going to talk about your graphic design work. Just come hang out because you're my friend and we want to hang out. Or come hang out and be a part of our small groups that has nothing to do with you taking photos.
Yeah.
Those things go a long way.
That's good.
I can't tell you how many times I've been on staff at churches and I never got to attend a church service because I was the guy making it happen.
Yeah. I
had to be filming or doing something with art or social media or video, whatever, photography. There's so many churches that I worked at where I can't recall a single sermon. And
wow.
It's sad.
Yeah.
And it gets even harder when these creatives have families, friends that they wanted fellowship with, they want to sit in a service with, and it just doesn't happen. Yeah. Because the leadership never really acknowledged that, hey, this is a human being. It's not just a machine.
That's good, man.
That's producing things.
Yeah.
And just kind of failed to treat them as a member of the church.
Yeah.
Somebody that you shepherd. And then at that, a creative is, like I said, dysfunctional a lot of times. So it kind of takes a little extra layer of shepherding and being patient with. That's the first thing I said was,
do your homework.
Yeah. Figure it out. Second thing is,
don't assume.
Don't assume. Creatives are humans and they need leadership.
Yeah.
this one's kind of tricky, and I hope I don't ruffle feathers with this statement. But I've been there. Like, your church service is a church service. It's a house of worship. It's not a Hollywood studio. So when you get creatives that want to be there and serving, it's because they want to do ministry. Otherwise, they would be pursuing a Hollywood job. I mean, I'm all for creativity. I'm all for excellence. But at some point, we have to admit that this is a church service. God is holy. At some point, you got to be careful not to become a gimmick. Otherwise, it just becomes this like exhausting rat race to always outdo yourself.
That's good, man. That's powerful. And oh gosh, I wish we had time to unpack. That's a good one. You wait till toward the end and drop that nugget. And so, but that is so good because we live in this this world and this culture and society where everyone is trying to one up the next person. Like I said, we talked about everyone wants to be an influencer and how many followers and how much traction. We're reading the analytics, you know what I'm saying, and all of that, and it is. And sometimes we can be performance driven, that we actually program the Holy Spirit out of the program.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? And and we do. It's like a Taylor Swift concert.
Unfortunately,
you know, I mean, it is.
And I feel like there's a time and place for something.
Yeah,
like that,
sure,
you know?
sure. And I just think that we're not saying not have a service with excellence, not have the bells and whistles if you can afford it, and your church, you know, can do that. And you have a team for that. But what we're saying, and what I'm hearing you saying, I should say, is that can't be the priority. You know, that can't be like, oh, in order for the Holy Spirit to abide here, for us to really experience a move of God, we got to have this huge LED wall, the smoke. We got to have, you know, the worship leader levitating from the ground. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't require all of that. You know, I've been in worship, man, where I've seen God move with a guy with a guitar, a stool, and a microphone.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, and
let's be honest, Gen Z and Alpha, because my daughter's in Alpha, so she's in youth ministry now.
Yeah.
They look at that kind of stuff, and most of the time they'll be like, man, that's kind of mid. Like, that's cringe. Like my daughter said, that's cringe. Like, and it is. A lot of times it comes off
mid and cringe. Oh, just by the way, I learned this from our team, because, you know, I'm as the old guy in the room. You know, words like for others who are listening, mid and cringe, they're slang. So explain. You gotta explain. You can't just drop that. You gotta explain mid and cringe. So just
for a lot of Gen Z and Alphas, when they see this kind of stuff excessively, it looks out of place.
That's good.
When they see a pastor, they're genuinely wanting to, like, they're seeking wisdom. Like, hey, bring me a word of God.
Yeah.
So when they see a middle-aged guy trying to look like Justin Bieber, or like, it just comes off weird to them.
Yes.
It's almost like a distraction.
Yeah.
Like, hey, are we supposed to be having church? Like, what's the deal? Like, like it's crazy because for millennials try to merge all these worlds. They try to merge, and it's cool. Some of it was really cool because I got to be a part of a lot of that. They merged. They tried to merge like a lot of the pop culture stuff with church culture. They were trying to reach people. Some of it was very effective. Some of it was not.
Yeah.
But I feel like to each generation, I mean, it's just like when you go fishing. I know Brent likes to go fishing. You use certain bait to catch certain fish.
Yeah.
Right. So the fish have changed. And so if you're fishing Gen Z, you're fishing alphas. It's just different bait.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got to be careful what kind of bait you're using.
So good.
And especially if you're going to exhaust the budget. You know, like, I think if you're going to exhaust the budget, it needs to be effective.
Yeah.
So go back, do your homework.
Yeah.
Like, what's going to work, what's not.
That's good. That's good, man. We'll have to unpack that. We'll have to come back and just unpack that.
Yeah, that one. There's another one I want to say is, as leaders, church leaders, if we're shepherding creatives, we have to always leave space for development. So what I mean by that is, when creatives do the same thing over and over, they get bored.
Yeah.
It is really bored. So if I'm doing church announcements, I got to film this sermon. After a couple of weeks, it's like, hey, what else are we doing?
Yeah.
But if you leave space in your schedules, in your quarterly, like whatever you however you map out your year, hey, let's try something new. Ask the questions like, hey man, like what's something you've always wanted to do?
Yeah.
You'd be surprised at some of the answers you'll get.
Yeah.
Man, I've always wanted to film a mini documentary. I wanted to film it in the beach of whatever. Like,
yeah.
Hey, let's figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
And I know what some people are thinking. Man, we don't have the money for that.
Yeah.
Trust me, I've been in so many shoestring budgets. Matter of fact, I think sometimes when you have less of a budget, you get more
creative. Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that.
So always leave space for that. Is there a conference that caters to your creative?
Yeah.
Can we make space for that and send this creative there? Send a team there. Books.
Yeah.
Make time for development. Read a book together. I mean, you guys read more books than I could ever wish to achieve, and I'm still trying to get there. But I like you guys inspire me to keep reading more and more. Yeah. There's books out there that inspire creatives. Yeah. Specific for creatives.
That's good, man.
So go out there and have your team read that.
Yeah.
Have your gift them this book and say, hey, can you read this by the end of the quarter, or let's read this together. Yeah. So always leave space for development, even if it's $100. Yeah, man, that can get you into a conference. There's webinars now. People do online conferences.
That's so true.
There's always room for something. I remember we filmed this promotional video one time, and I always wanted to try it. We couldn't afford the tracks. Yeah, I wanted to do the camera tracks. Yeah, but we ghetto rigged. I gotta explain what that means. But we rigged a wheelchair that we bought at a thrift store, and the video turned out great. And I got to achieve like this track look to this video, and it turned out really cool. And that was like, so that's something I still take to this day. It's like, man, we did that. Yeah, with no money, whatever. I think we paid like $15 for the wheelchair at a thrift store, but it was so cool. Good. It's some guys, it's just endless. Some guys want to paint. Some guys want to try this and that. Leave room for that. Yeah, man. That's so good, man. And I would say in closing with that, man, I think it's great, Bryan, if you are a leader, I would encourage you to, if you're hiring and you're just starting with the creative, review some of their work and try to look at it through the lens of the creative by asking them, hey, tell me, what was your inspiration behind this? Because I think as you hear them articulate their thought process to creating this form of art, it'll give you a better understanding on how this particular creative thinks, and because every creative, they have their own unique process of creation, right? Or process of inspiration, a process of execution, and there, it's the same as like preachers developing sermons and authors writing books. We all have this process that we go through in creating the content, visualizing the execution of the content to the actual research and the delivery of the content. Like there is this process that you go through, and so looking at creatives. That's part of the leadership. I mean, if you have creatives on your team, get in the trenches with them, figure it out. Yeah, like don't treat a creative like some takeout where you just place an order on a menu and walk away and go home with your product. Yeah, like get in there and figure out what's the process. How long is this going to really take? Like, how many hours are you really putting in? Yeah. I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus or anything, but like I have worked for leadership that treated me like that. They literally would say, hey, I need this, and this, and I need it done by tomorrow. And they would go home and have dinner with their family, and I would pull an all-nighter to get it done. And there's days where that's gonna happen, but if it's always happening, at that point, it's not a problem with the creative process. It's the problem with how you're planning these things. And then at the end, it just kind of makes you feel like you're not valued. You're just a machine. You know,
that's good, man. And I think early on, I've learned to step back. And because I'm not a creative. I can do some clip art, and I barely can, do that well. But I think we as leaders who are leading creatives don't assume that it just takes 15 minutes to create a brochure or an ad. Because I know that I've been guilty in the past. For having creatives in my team back in my church, be like, hey, can you create this real quick? And and then I'll say I'll say out of my non-creative mind, it's real simple. I just need a brochure or pamphlet that just says this. Don't have to be all that. And so I just need it, really fast, to your point of that. And so I've learned, and I actually had at my church back home, we had a creative who she actually, the last time I did that, she actually sat me down, was like, hey, let me help you understand the process I go through to just create a flyer that's an invite to a D-Now weekend. And when she broke it down to the process and InDesign and Illustrator and all the stuff that she's color schemes, and I was like, oh. So then I realized in my non-creative mind, I'm like, yo, I was actually being disrespectful. In my assumption of her. And that's just like, and she made the statement, which brought me to what I just said about my sermon process. She's like, that's just like, our pastor asking you to go and preach this, this deep theological message, and you just go in your room about 15 minutes and come out with this.
There might be a day where that happens.
Right.
But it shouldn't happen every week.
Exactly. And there are times where we have to just share, and you're in a moment where you have to preach a message right then or whatever. But to your point, as us leading creatives, don't assume that our time frame is their true time frame for creating content. So
one last one.
Again,
this is probably a hot take, so to speak. What I tell leaders is act your wage, in a sense of like what you're looking for.
Act your wage.
So if you're looking for a volunteer, right, you could get a guy that does Steven Spielberg type stuff. But you're not going to demand that from a volunteer. If you have a guy that wants to serve and do it as a volunteer, man, praise God.
Right.
If it's a volunteer position, or if you're barely paying somebody, you can't demand, some Hollywood production off a guy that you're barely paying. My first ministry job, again, they didn't ask the right questions, so people just assume things.
Right.
My first ministry job, I was 21, and we got paid peanuts, and which is was kind of expected. Which is fine. That's what I agreed to. I wanted to serve. I wanted it to get in there. So we would get paid for 20 hours, right? But obviously we'd work 50, 60 hours. But what they didn't realize is, unlike the other 21-year-olds that were on the same boat with me at this church, they lived with their parents. I had a mortgage, a wife, and a baby. So I had to go work other jobs after I got out of the church. So it can burn you out quick if they're demanding things that they're not necessarily returning. Because at the end of the day, like, you can't be creative if all you're worrying about is how am I gonna pay this bill, or how am I gonna do this. So if you're demanding a guy that's a volunteer to create these masterpieces every time, at some point this guy's gonna be like, you know what, inflation is not good right now, and I'm gonna go do something else. So just act. I mean, obviously, if you have more resources, praise God. The more the more resources you have, the more you can hold someone accountable. So
That's fair.
As a leader, we have to understand that. Like, we can't just expect everyone to do everything for free all the time. And there are times where that's going to happen. There's times where it's not going to happen.
Yeah,
and
count
so
the
we
costs.
you just gotta
Count the
be there.
costs. Yeah, that's good,
that.
man. Bryan, man, listen, I we could probably do a part 2 of this and stuff. I mean, it's so good, man. Thank you for that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope and pray that was as insightful for you as it was for even myself, man. I mean, I'm sitting here listening like, wow, this is really cool. So thank you, bro, for that.
Of course, absolutely.
And as always, ladies and gentlemen, we want you to, we would love for you to share our podcast, rate, subscribe, all of the stuff you're supposed to do. And as always, you can follow our organization at SLU Lead. That's at SLU Lead. Follow my brother Brent at Brent A. Crow. You can follow me at I am Jeff Wallace. And Bryan, how can people follow you, bro?
It's at Elvow Music, ELVOW.
All right. And then as always, friends, as we say every week, at least I say every week, if you're going to be intentional about your day, be intentional about, one, being excellent in all things, but also be intentional about doing everything that you can to be the best version of yourself. So until next time, we will see you soon. God bless you. Peace.